The design choices behind Wattam are all centered on one overarching theme, that being that joy and happiness are found primarily in human interaction. Now, at first glance, Wattam may appear to be pretty bare bones, completely devoid of meaningful mechanics, beautiful graphics, or a deep and impactful narrative. But to view this title in that manner would be to completely discredit the deliberate focus on the simplistic. Sure, we can find happiness in complex things, but Wattam reminds us that there exists a primal form of happiness that doesn't come from tangible objects or worldly possessions, but instead from the relationships we forge with the people around us. It encourages us to be mindful of how fortunate we are to have those relationships while they still exist in our lives, instead of lamenting on how lucky we were when we had them after losing them. There is so much to be gained by strengthening these bonds with other people, as we are all better off when people come together instead of living separate lives. It's a simple message that Wattam wants us to take, and the simplicity of that message is reflected in the construction of the game world, its narrative, and its gameplay. All the action in the game plays out on a small planet that is devoid of life except for a green cube named Mayor. New friends quickly emerge though, as bite-sized missions are completed quickly. These new companions come in the form of everyday objects like books, rocks, and forks, all with their own little faces drawn on. Their physical appearance isn't overly complex by choice. They're meant to feel familiar and plain to emphasize the pureness of their happiness. Before you know it, other islands will spawn with their own inhabitants waiting to join in on the fun. All of these characters are designed with one motivation in mind: to enjoy the company of those around them by meeting each other, becoming friends, and then engaging with their favorite pastimes, which are either spinning around in circles or tumbling through the air after launching themselves skyward. This and some very, very light puzzle solving is about all you'll be doing in this game. But again, this is intentional. It's meant to invoke a childlike splendor. There is no ulterior motives driving these characters. There's no hatred or jealousy or vice amongst these folks. They find joy simply from existing amongst one another. As a player, you can't help but to smile along with these creatures as they laugh, fly, and genuinely care for one another. This utopia of household items really gets you thinking as a player about how humanity is driven mostly by self-interest, whether it spawns from a quest for power, a feeling of entitlement, or a desire to avoid self-deprecation and sadness. And more than anything else, it asks why we can't just be like these creatures. The game comments on this deeply rooted human mindset in the form of its main antagonist, the Moon, if you can even call him an antagonist. The story of Wattam is very basic, again by design, and it tells the story of a world that has been ripped apart and is slowly coming back together. In the past, the Moon was filled with only a desire for power, and so he attacked Earth, destroying its land and sending its inhabitants flying all over the different corners of space. Yet, even in this lonely state, the world begins to repair itself until it eventually becomes whole again. The Moon character attempts to be happy from securing power until he realizes that a lonely throne will never make him joyous. The ending of the game sees this character begging everyone to forgive him and allowing him to partake in the fun that they're all experiencing, and you as a player are given the choice on how to respond to this character. The choice doesn't really make much of a difference, yet I still found myself thinking deeply about the words presented to me on the screen. Ironically, I went against the game's core design by choosing a complex thought instead of the simple one, simply saying, you know what, it's okay. Still though, the choice of words is thought-provoking and it allows for different meanings to be taken from it. But however meaningful the story may or may not be, it's not the thing that I will remember most about my time with Wattam. Instead, what I will take away is how much these personified objects simply appreciate each other's presence. They've experienced the loneliness and isolation of being without one another, and it makes their time together more cherished. They don't need games or TV or something to do to make them happy. They are smitten simply by running around an empty field with each other and laughing and carrying on. This kind of childlike joy leaves our lives as we grow into adults, but Wattam asks us to reflect on why that is and makes us feel silly for doing so. Wattam laughs at those of us who think a new car or a big house are what will make us happy. Happiness isn't a tangible reward for achieving a goal. It's not something that will appear when you expect it to, but instead, it overtakes you when you get caught up in the moment, like laughing with friends or family. Spending too long chasing happiness will only get you burned in the end. You won't catch it because that's not how it works. It comes in the simple moments, like making a new friend or helping someone in need. The game hopes to supply you with many examples of these types of moments, and it succeeds in doing so. Complexity often bogs down our happiness, as expecting people to think and behave in certain ways will often just lead to disappointment and resentment. Happiness comes when we accept people for who they are, their flaws and all, and still being able to accept them and find meaning with them, because it sure as hell beats the alternative of being alone. I mean, if this small square, circle, and triangle can do it, why can't we? I'm almost certainly reading too deeply into it now, but Wattam asks us to be better to each other and to appreciate each other's company without taking it for granted or demanding different versions of people. It's a simple but powerful thought, and every component of Wattam's design is meant to reinforce that. Its world is small but full of life, its story is easily digestible and pure, and its gameplay mechanics are wacky antics like climbing all over each other and sending everyone sky high in a cascade of laughter. Every miniature mission that you complete is over quickly, never asking you to dwell on it for too long, because overthinking leads to complexity, and complexity robs a moment of pure fun. The fun comes from getting caught up in the moment with the people you care for, and all of these elements combine to create a game that celebrates human interaction and the joy it creates by appreciating the simplicity of it. Thanks for watching.